Good morning, everyone. Lots of stuff going on, even with the government prorogued at this point in time, waiting until September 23rd for the throne speech. But the newly minted conservative leader is moving into position, and there's speculation, this is commentary from Global, talking about how the opposition parties don't really want an election and probably won't spring one at the throne speech. And the reason for this is, and their speculation is, to give we more time to do damage to the Liberals. I don't know about that. Here we go. Global News says the Conservatives have a new leader in Aaron O'Toole. Let the games begin, but not yet. The next federal election started in the wee hours of Monday with the election of Durham MP Aaron O'Toole as the new leader of the Conservative Party. With all the major players now in place, it's only a matter of time until Canadians are asked to vote again in a national election. Pandemic be darned. Last week, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau moved to take control of both timing and narrative of the coming federal election by proroguing Parliament and setting the stage for a new speech from the throne. When Parliament returns in a month's time, the Prime Minister has signaled that his government will reveal a transformational plan chock full of new program and spending ideas to, quote, build back better, a slogan pure-lined from the U.S. Democrats he is already road testing. Yeah, and I don't like the build back better idea. I just think it sounds more propaganda-y, like, oh, let's flatten the curve, because it was lies, like flatten the curve and then what? Stay in our houses forever. Yay, good plan, everybody, until you get this injection. Yeah, it's from China. Yeah, it was tested and developed by the Chinese military. Shut up and take your vaccine, bigot. Anyway, back to this. This kicks off the game of chicken in which the Prime Minister will dare the opposition parties to bring down his government by voting against a brighter future that the Liberals say only their party and leadership can deliver. Yeah, they're completely competent party and leadership that doesn't have a finance minister. Has a finance minister who doubles as the deputy prime minister while the prime minister is taking private meetings. I'm not sure. But it's interesting. Yesterday I was looking through the comments as I do, and somebody was saying Mark Carney is the finance minister. He's the one feeding the stuff to Minister Freeland. Yeah, maybe. That would probably be smart because, as I said, if you have zero experience, you're likely to make amateurish mistakes because she's an amateur, right? She doesn't know finance. And if she does know finance, please show me. Please. So show me her financial experience at all. Anything, really. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen proof of her ability to correctly manage finances or her even philosophy on finances, right? Like usually there's what is it? Fiat and Keynesian, or maybe that's the wrong one. Anyway, I'm not a finance guy, but there are schools of finance that people belong to, and these are long held beliefs. It's not like you wake up one day and you're finance minister and all of a sudden you believe in this theory. The theory that I do think that Miss Freeland believes in, that I'm going to talk about later on, is propaganda, right? Propaganda-y stuff. I think that. Yeah. And so, is that a financial theory? I don't know. But usually, finance ministers who are interested in good finances have developed their own mind about how things work. Bill Morneau certainly had ideas about how finances worked, right? He thought that Canada had a lot of room to spend into debt because of our strong debt to GDP ratio, right? He said that there's lots of room. There are countries that are very, very jealous of us, right? He had theories about and could defend his opinion about these financial things. I'm not sure that Miss Freeland has that acumen. I don't think she's quite there, because how could she possibly be? Even if she is really smart, even if she is Rhodes Scholar and all sorts of these other things that are listed in her resume, that all sound wonderful. Again, nothing can replace experience, in my opinion. Nothing at all. Okay, and experience doing it, and right or wrong, if you can defend it, then you can defend it. There are going to be people who are going to champion you, and there are going to be people who vilify you, and you got to live with that. But I think waking up one day as finance minister, yikes, right? While strange things can happen in Parliament, I wouldn't bet on an election being triggered by this trap Trudeau's setting to spend a lot and dare the opposition to bring it down, right? It simply isn't in the interest of the opposition parties to go now. Bottom line, the Liberals are still well positioned to win an election if it were held in the near term. This just talks about the polling, and basically the Liberals are at about 50%. Therefore, we should expect one or more of the opposition parties to break ranks and support the government's speech from the throne. Yes, that they could extract a price for doing so, just as NDP leader Jack Layton did to keep Paul Martin's dying Liberal minority government alive for a brief time. But even if the government wins the vote on the speech from the throne, all is not lost for the opposition parties. Whichever party votes with the Liberals can claim a victory, as Layton did. But the other opposition parties will benefit too. They still get to oppose the speech from the throne without triggering an election. Not having an election allows more time for the We Charity scandal to do its work. It is clearly responsible for the decline in the polls the Liberal Party is experiencing. However, it has not had the same depth of impact as the SNC-Lavalin scandal had prior to the last election. So they're saying this We scandal is not as big a scandal as SNC-Lavalin. Maybe true. And I do think that there's no opposition party that is in position for an election, with the exception possibly of the Conservatives. They have enough money, and now they have a leader. Up until they had a leader, they weren't in a position. Now they have a leader, they can go in a direction. Fail fast, right? I wonder if O'Toole does the same in an election, if they'll replace him, right? If we just keep testing leaders against Trudeau, or if you realize that it's the product you're selling and not necessarily just the leader that is the problem, right? I think that maybe you should look at the policies and how they're not being they're not being nobody's enthusiastic about them, right? Like it's just kind of they're liberal light. They're playing catch up to the Liberals. If the Liberals do something, they're saying, yeah, we could. They being the Conservatives say, yeah, we could do it better, and then they don't give a clear articulation of how they could do it better. So it's interesting, but. The only people in position right now for an election are the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party. The NDP, the Bloc. The NDP's broke. The Bloc is. I think they could probably run an election. They'd be fine, and they'd probably do what they did last time. And I don't think the Green Party wants an election. I think people are saw Planet of the Humans, and we're going to get into that too. Here is Michael Boyer, and he says, just in, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Erin O'Toole spoke early this afternoon, according to the Prime Minister's office. The PM congratulated Erin O'Toole, offered the new opposition leader briefings with Dr. Tam and anything else he needed. Both agreed to be on the same page to enhance national unity. I don't know what that means. Does that mean Erin O'Toole is getting on Justin Trudeau's page? Because I think that's the only way Justin Trudeau plays, right? I'm pretty sure that's how things work. Here's the statement from Erin O'Toole. This is Andrew Lawton. He says, looks like Erin O'Toole raised Western alienation concerns in his first conversation with Justin Trudeau's Conservative leader. It says, this afternoon, Mr. O'Toole spoke with Prime Minister Trudeau on the phone. Mr. Trudeau congratulated Mr. O'Toole on becoming the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Mr. O'Toole thanked Mr. Trudeau, and they had a cordial conversation about family and their commitment to public service. Mr. O'Toole made a point to raise Western alienation and called on Mr. Trudeau to outline a plan to address real and serious national unity concerns in the speech from the throne. Mr. O'Toole also stressed the importance of parliamentary committees resuming as quickly as possible following the speech from the throne so that members of Parliament can continue their investigation into the Trudeau-We scandal and the many important studies, including the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations study of the situation in Hong Kong that were suspended when the Liberals shut down Parliament. And this says the same thing. New opposition leader says MPs will seek immediate resumption of suspended Commons Committee investigations of federal contracting, We Charity, and China. And yeah, I think those are all demands that any good leader would ask for, right? Bernier did a speech welcoming O'Toole to the fold. The first 5 minutes are dedicated to Erin O'Toole, basically saying he's another libcon. 5 minutes to the end of the speech, and the speech is only 10 minutes in English, and he does it in French. I didn't see if there were any questions at the end. I hadn't got there yet. The speech is okay. I preferred the last 5 minutes to the first 5 minutes. I think that's what he should focus on. Talk about policies, talk about other things. Attacking O'Toole is he's either gonna catch fire or he's not. I think the way Bernier breaks through is to talk policy and talk about how his ideas are better and what he would do instead, rather than attacking O'Toole. Politics is a personal game sometimes. You have to attack the person to make sure people know what you're talking about, right? And if you get too complicated, it loses the message. But I think you can if you tack to the message of this is our policy and this is what the vision, right? Like the vision of the thing rather than they're awful, right? Because that's what the Conservatives are trying to do to the Liberals. And well, I mean, it doesn't really work, right? We could do it better than them. They're bad. I mean, I think highlighting the Liberals' incompetence is good strategy because they are incompetent. And I think that Bernier, instead of focusing on the Conservatives, should be focusing on the Liberals and saying, welcome to the fight. I hope they show more conservative values than they did last time. Rather than spending 5 minutes talking about how O'Toole is the same as Scheer. Just talk about how there's a better vision, and the vision is X, right? And attack the Liberals. Attack the Liberals and their incompetence. Make the case that the Liberals don't have a team around them. Make the case they don't have they don't have enough talent for a finance minister. Where's their party, right? Why don't they have enough talent for a finance minister? Why is somebody who's completely, absolutely incapable, inexperienced, perhaps she's capable, I don't know, but inexperienced, being put in this role while doing double duty as the deputy prime minister? They must have no talent. Speculate on the absolute emptiness. Emptiness isn't the right word. Hold on. Devoid. How the Liberals are devoid of talent. There was another word. It was going to be better. Anyway, doesn't matter. To comment on that, right? Focusing on the Conservatives is the wrong move, and it's the same wrong move the Conservatives made by focusing on the PPC. PPC are insignificant. If they get 2 or 3 seats, it's like fighting the Greens. It's like the Conservatives focusing on the Greens. Could you imagine? Why? It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense for Bernier to focus on the Conservatives. Say, welcome to the fight, Aaron O'Toole. I hope we can work together at some point. And wish him well. Sour grapes. You don't need to have sour grapes, Max. Come on, right? Move on. You're better than that. You can be better than that. Do better than that. Okay. And moving on, here's Doug Ford. And I don't mean to leave it at do better than that. The speech is fine. The last 5 minutes are fine. But refocus doesn't mean rerunning the 2019 election. Okay, that's refocus and look at how terrible the Liberals have been. People can see it. People want to work with somebody who can see it too and articulate it clearly and say, this is what we're going to do instead. We're going to have a team that is capable of putting up a finance minister who's capable and who won't break the law. Right? Why are we focusing on petty politics? Okay, moving on. Back to Doug Ford and provincial politics. We are putting human traffickers on notice, says Doug Ford. Our government's $307 million anti-human trafficking strategy will support survivors and provide law enforcement with the resources they need to keep these criminals behind bars. You know what they need to do? Deal with the judges that keep letting people out on bail. The problem isn't not the enforcement. The problem is the people get into jail and then their lawyer says, in this situation, my client was XYZ. These are the reasons that they did this. And the judge says, that's awful. I can't believe that happened to your client. He's released. Or COVID's too scary. He's released. And, well, this happens. Here's Natasha Fatah, and she says, a terror man convicted of terror charges rearrested could pose public safety risk, RCMP. Kevin Omar Mohammed, 27, first arrested in 2016 at University of Waterloo, had hunting knife Al-Qaeda instructions on how to carry out an attack. And not to say human traffickers are the same as terrorist attacks. They're not necessarily, but they're organized crime in the sense that they're exploiting the system, and they understand that there are exploits to be used in the system. And I mean, they're well funded because they're human trafficking and they're making money, right? Like they have enough money to buy hotel rooms. They have enough money to lure the girls. They have enough money to have the infrastructure in place to do this stuff up and down the 401. So what makes you think that they're not savvy enough to take advantage of the leaky legal system we've got here and the revolving door of criminals able to leave just because a bleeding heart judge? It's wonderful that you're trying to crack down on it, Doug, but you've got a problem. You've got a really, really big problem with judges that are letting criminals out. And well, I mean, it's obvious, and there's nothing that, well, if you have a lot of law enforcement, that's wonderful. You're going to get a court backlog that's massive, and then they're going to get out on technicalities that way. And I mean, not that it's not good enough, but it's not good enough. Again, they're not playing the game out. It's like playing chess, and you pull your queen out and your rook out, or your castle out, or your horse knight out, before having any kind of support troops out there, and then you don't understand why you lose the game, right? Like you lose the game because you're behaving because you're not thinking the game through. And like it seems like unless you solve one problem, you're just going to compound the issues with spending this money on law enforcement, in my opinion, right? When you're just re-releasing them, man, that's a big long list of pending trials and people getting out on technicalities. I don't like it, and not to mention all the illegal gun crime. People get it the same day. There have been stories, and I've highlighted them, of people being arrested multiple times in a day for the same crime, drug crime or gun crimes or whatever, illegal guns. And yet the government continues to crack down stupidly on hunters and long guns and rifles that are bought legally. So yeah, and there's legal challenges to all that stuff, and they carry on as if the legal challenges are not worth their time. And I mean, they're writing the policy, so not that they have to behave that way to some extent, but there's going to be legal challenges. But these are egregious, right? These are egregious oversteps, in my opinion. And ignoring the illegal guns is just as bad as ignoring the illegal immigration, and it's all part and parcel of the same problem, right? The leaky borders. Christia Freeland, somebody said, "Where's your mask?" And somebody else said, "This is from another time. There's no festivals going on right now." And yet Christia Freeland says, Today, my family and I are proud to join fellow Ukrainian Canadians in celebrating Ukrainian Independence Day. Canada is a steadfast partner to Ukraine and will always stand up for its sovereignty and territorial integrity. So here's, right? Like, I don't know if this is August 24th, 2020, or if this is like another picture from a different date and she's just resharing it, but it seems like it's from today. And, where's your mask? It seems hypocritical. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Freeland knew her grandfather was an editor of a Nazi newspaper. This is from 2017, so this is years ago. But Foreign Affairs Minister Christia Freeland knew for more than 2 decades that her maternal Ukrainian grandfather was the chief editor of a Nazi newspaper in occupied Poland that vilified Jews during the Second World War. So propaganda, right? Here's the modern version. This is the Globe and Mail's Climate Canada. Canada's needs a green recovery. Can Christia Freeland deliver? So this is a Globe Climate newsletter, and it's got this is like a puff piece before the actual piece, and this is the deeper dive here. And it says, this is paraphrasing or reordering the quote from Ms. Freeland from her little 2-minute press conference I covered before. But she says the recovery will be equitable. The recovery will be inclusive. The recovery will focus on jobs and growth. The recovery will be green. And the author says, I've reversed the flow there from how Christia Freeland phrased things in her first news conference as Canada's finance minister last week. But why does what the finance minister say about the environment matter? Because governments are about determining priorities, and the finance minister is about determining spending priorities. If Canada's economic recovery is to be green, Ms. Freeland will play a big role in determining how that spending gets allocated. It's also important because, as of now, Ms. Freeland and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau are setting expectations that they'll aggressively pursue all of these policy goals, and that, as Adam Radwanski, sorry if I got that wrong, and Patrick Brethor report, is a cause for encouragement among some observers and mounting concern among others. A green recovery, and I'm just scrolling down here, a green recovery will require that kind of policy commitment and a whole lot of money on the table. So the article is thin. The green recovery, at least they admit, is taxpayer subsidized and not the thing. The difference with green energy and oil and gas industry is the oil and gas industry make money, and the green industry make money through taxpayer subsidy. So any money that's made through green energy generally is through taxpayer subsidy, or to get it spun up is through taxpayer subsidy. And if you watch Planet of the Humans, you would know that building a, say, windmill takes more like greenhouse gases than the windmill would remove, right? Like building the windmill requires CO2 and manufacturing and all sorts of very intensive, very hot, like melting metals to form it into big, cones and things to fit on the blades and all of that stuff. Now, I'm not a windmill maker, so I don't know if it's metal they use or what exactly, but Planet of the Humans goes through it, so that's what I'm referencing. Please watch that if you're interested in how much money is needed for the green recovery to work. Fundamentally, it's a scam. It's a scam to take taxpayer money to dump into green energy boutique policies and projects that end up making electricity a lot more expensive and intermittent. California is dealing with brownouts right now. Ontario's energy prices have skyrocketed due to this exact same policy mismanagement that's being proposed here. So I think this is bunk. I think that the finance minister should probably be a finance person. And I think that the finance minister pursuing green policies is, I guess the kind of economic policy school one can belong to, but I don't think it's one that Canadians would really accept, or I didn't think it was one that Canadians would really accept up until now, I suppose. Okay, here is moving into COVID. Here's CTV National, and they're reporting more than 55 flights have landed in Canada between August 1st and August 18th that had passengers who tested positive for COVID-19 after arriving in the country. So we still, at the beginning of this, I said, man, I wonder why we're not shutting down flights from infected areas. We're still not shutting down flights from infected areas, yet we're having a huge amount of costs associated with this, and we have lockdowns still in place, and we have mandatory mask orders. Why aren't we even trying to get a handle on this at all? Why are we just landing people and letting them out? And like the contact tracing, that's not happening so much. There's all sorts of flaws in their ironclad plans, and not the least of which are leaky borders. Again, people can just fly here, right? And yeah, go about your business. It's just fine. Maybe they're supposed to quarantine for 2 weeks, but I haven't heard much about that either, right? Like these articles are talking about people arriving in Canada with COVID-19. And if we're really trying to get a handle on this, if we're really trying to eradicate this, does this make sense? Is that behavior that makes sense, right? Like, okay, here's Glenn Mascarin. And they said, pandemics cost worse than first expected, and Alberta economy to take the biggest hit, and the conference board says. And so here is National Post. Pandemics cost worse than first predicted. Alberta economy to take the biggest hit. Conference board. So they're the people who are saying it. But Alberta's economy is expected to suffer an 11.3% decline in 2020, the worst in the country, according to a new Conference Board of Canada report that projects the COVID-19 induced recession will hit Canada nearly twice as hard as the group initially thought. The last time that the board wrote an outlook report was near the height of the pandemic in April, when the country was still shut down and economists' forecasts were clouded by uncertainty. The organization estimated, sorry, I'm going to pause Aaron O'Toole here. The organization estimated that Canada was heading for a 4.3% GDP contraction by the end of 2020. 4 months later, it's clear the damage will be much worse than initially thought, as the board now says Canada is heading for an 8.2% GDP decline by the end of 2020. Initially, we thought this would last from March to perhaps June and July, and in the second half of the year, the economy would be fully back to operating normally. This is not the case at all, said Conference Board of Canada Chief Economist Pedro Antunes after publishing his latest projections Monday. What we've come to realize is the economy will be operating below pre-pandemic levels. The board's province-to-province breakdown was similarly altered. In April, it did not foresee a GDP loss for any province hitting 6%. The projection of a 5.8% drop for Alberta was the highest. The only three provinces the board expects won't surpass that number now are Manitoba, PEI, and BC. Alberta's deeper decline is due to the double whammy of the lockdown and the crumbling of oil prices. West Texas intermediate prices were hovering above $50 in February before falling deep into the negative territory. Crude prices have rebounded since, but are still trading at only around $42. Okay, so a collapse to zero in negative prices and then a rebound to $42. What double whammy? An $8 loss is not a double whammy. Are they unable to get their production back? What is the double whammy? Because a double whammy would be it reduced and then went to the big negative and then stayed there. But there's a rebound. So is the rebound calculated into the percentage, the 11.3 percentage? If that's so, how deep was this? How deep was the negative oil prices? How long? Because it didn't look that long to me, but maybe I'm wrong. Again, I can't keep up with everything. I'm just looking at the politics. So check my financial stuff, check my oil stuff. Please look into it yourself. I'm doing my best, but I make mistakes. So be aware of that. Okay. The outlook for oil prices, back to the article, over the next 2 years is quite pessimistic because of the impact of transportation, which is a big user of oil, Antunes said. That affects profits and royalties the government will have to forego, but the biggest impact is the capital investment. Firms have cut down to the bare bones. Business investment is not expected to pick up again until spring 2021, while a stark decline in household spending won't correct until 2022. These predictions seem... I don't know. I wouldn't put too much stock in these predictions because these predictions are outperformed, and then it doesn't work necessarily like that. Now they might be accurate, but I don't know. I think people were surprised at how quickly the United States bounced back. A lot of the reason for the lockdowns continuing is fear of a second wave. I haven't seen any evidence to support a big second wave resurgence, and any second wave I've seen has been very low in deaths. So it seems like artificially keeping the economy closed and I don't know what the end game is. Why would you do that? Why would you do that to your citizens? That doesn't seem responsible. But here we are, right? Here's another financial watchdog. It says financial watchdog to report on whether COVID-19 has hurt Ontario's credit rating. Ontario's fiscal watchdog will release a report this morning on the province's credit rating. The report from the Financial Accountability Office will look at the ratings since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Earlier this month, the province announced that that its deficit projection had nearly doubled in 3 months because of the outbreak. Finance Minister Rod Phillips said the deficit would be $38.5 billion, up from $20.5 billion projected in March. So, yeah, I mean, they're spending a lot of money. Provincially, we have a lot of debt. And this is just the deficit, not the full debt, right? And federally, we have a lot of deficit and debt. We have over $1 trillion debt, I believe, and hundreds of billion dollars in deficit. And man, how taxes, there's one taxpayer. I don't know how we're supposed to get out of this mess. Now, there are revenue sources and streams for the government, but that taxes, right? And there are other revenue streams that you can count as well. Certainly, it's not all taxes that go into the makeup of a government's purse, right? But at the same time, it seems like the longer this goes on, the longer the mismanagement continues, the more difficult it's going to be to fix. The longer we have a finance minister who doesn't understand the basics of finance, regardless of her other experience, the harder it's going to be to fix. The longer the parliament is prorogued and the government is prevented from being able to debate bills and to move bills through the House and to put good laws forward rather than, and I mean, what Trudeau's done, I don't think has been good in his tenure. He's changed a lot and made things very drastically different than they were in 2015. And you can look at the numbers across major cities. In the violence, the increase in violence, the increase in home prices, the difficulty with people finding rent, the increase in food prices. These things are not good. It's not positive, right? Like, a case can be made that having a competent government results in a more stable, happier life. And yet people are claiming that this incompetent government is what they want. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? Why do you keep shooting yourself in the foot? Oh, I don't know. I don't get it. For virtue signaling? Because they say they're anti-racist and feminist? And people don't see through this, the very thin veneer of this? Nobody's watched the Black Lives Matter riots? Why aren't they tearing down crack houses? Why are they tearing down statues? That's borrowed. Somebody tweeted that and I liked it. But really, it's a valid question, right? If Black Lives Matter, why are the real problems facing the African American community being ignored? Fatherlessness, the destruction of their family unit, right? I remember watching The Cosby Show. That was like and regardless of what happened to Bill Cosby since, that was a good, wholesome example of life in the 80s. What's it's changed to now? Have you guys seen WAP? What in the world? What happened? Right? Heathcliff Huxtable would be horrified at WAP. Anyway, regardless, it seems like nobody wants to actually address the core issues. They want to make the issue that we're not allowed to have 11-year-olds twerk on Netflix. That's what the issue is here, right? Like, it's not the destruction of the family unit. The issue is the lack of sexualization of my 11-year-old, right? According to these crazy people. And it seems like, well, again, competent government and competent adult conversation rather than this unbelievable debasing of our entire society would be prudent. But it seems like everybody's enthusiastically watching Cuties and WAP. And here we are going, I wonder why our society is imploding. Oh well, have you seen Idiocracy? Because it looks like we're living it. Okay, that's enough out of me today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. I'm actually going to be recording Speaking Moistly today, so check out Speaking Moistly. It looks like it'll be a intermittent or maybe more regular. I don't know. We'll see. We'll figure it out. But I'm excited to talk to Greg, so and hopefully you're excited to see it. So I'll put that up as soon as it's ready, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.